for the New York Yankees in the 1940s, 50s, and early 60s. He was humble and a hardworking man from the Hill area of St. Louis. He was a great baseball player, but most of all, he was a student of people. He was also widely known for his yogiisms, like, "It ain't over till it's over." Sage expressions and observations of life and human relations humorously expressed in the terms of the common person. The title of this message, "The Future Ain't What It Used to Be," is one of those sayings. One of Yogi's sayings seems particularly relevant in our current times. You've got to be very careful if you don't know where you are going, because you might not get there. Well, our destination now seems uncertain and quite cloudy. I've had people say to me that they feel adrift, they're on hold, or they're waiting for what we don't know. In just a few short months ago, the future felt more in control and somewhat predictable. It just ain't what it used to be. The Bible is full of stories of hardship and uncertainty. Our passages this morning are short sections from difficult times where uncertainty and fear was strong. The first of our three little snippets are, two of the three are from John 20. It's a one verse long, verse 19. When it was evening on that day, the first day of the week, and the doors of the house where the disciples had met were locked for fear of the Jews, Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." You all know the rest of that story. That was what I calculate to be Easter Sunday night, the first appearance of Jesus to the apostles where they were meeting. Verse 26, a week later, his disciples were again in the house, and Thomas was with them. Although the doors were shut, Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." So much for the gospel readings, but I have to think about what that means. What do you suppose the conversation in that house was before Jesus appeared? It must have been turmoil. Imagine being the disciples going it alone, gathering in a locked house because they feared the Jews. Yes, Jesus gave instructions and encouragement when he appeared, but their future just ain't what it used to be. Now they were the leaders and had to make it up as they went along. About 600 years earlier, in 586 BC, the Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar invaded Judah. He destroyed the city of Jerusalem and its temple and deported a good deal of the population to Babylon. In 537 BC, a new force, the Persian king Cyrus, defeated the Babylonians and allowed the Jews to return to Judah. The passage from Isaiah that I'm about to read is from a prophet speaking to the Jews in Babylonia following their 49-year exile. This is Isaiah 43, verses 18 and 19. "Do not remember the former things, or consider the things of old. I am about to do a new thing. Now it springs forth. Do you not perceive it? I will make a way in the wilderness and rivers in the desert." Now, can you imagine being told these kind of things? Being told you can go home. But this is my home. 49 years, that's a long time, especially when people didn't live as long as they do today. I don't know any other home. Who's alive who still knows how things were in Jerusalem back then or even now? Sure, there were stories, but what will it really be like? Who will lead us? These are uncertain times. You can hear the people saying those things. So not all of those people returned to Judah, only some. But those who did return rebuilt Jerusalem and the temple. We have a parallel to the Jews' 49-year exile. It is in our very own country. We had a pandemic 102 years ago, the Spanish flu in 1918. Now, very few people are now alive who lived through the Spanish flu pandemic. And if they were alive, and there are some, they were just children, and they couldn't help us understand what it was like. There isn't any first-person experience. It's all been lost. And we can look nothing to history to help us, just like the Jews in exile. There's a financial investment firm that's begun airing a commercial just very recently with the tagline, "Knowledge is the antidote to uncertainty." Well, there are many antidotes to uncertainty, especially where knowledge is unobtainable or conflicting. Currently, we do have conflicting, or at least the very best, changing data and knowledge presented hourly by messages on our cell phones. And certainly, plenty of talk and options are rambling around. Yogi had something to say about that too. He said it was impossible to get a conversation going. Everybody was talking too much. So how do we make sense of our future? The situation is new to us, but it's not new. This is the first time we have faced a worldwide deadly pandemic and life-threatening situation. It is the first time in recent years. As Yogi said, it's like deja vu all over again. Let's look back. I'm briefly going to go through these. 1918 was the Spanish flu. 500 million people in the world were infected, 50 million died, 675,000 in the US. 1957 and 58, getting closer. Another pandemic globally, 1.1 million deaths, 116,000 in the US. 1968, another pandemic, 100,000 deaths in the US, 1 million deaths worldwide. In the 1970s, we got better. We avoided a pandemic with the swine flu because a vaccination program was put into full swing very rapidly. In 2009, the World Health Organization declared a new pandemic with an H1N1 virus. Approximately 60 million Americans were affected, 200 in 2010. 265,000 hospitalizations and 12,000 US deaths. Fast forward a little bit to 2020, as of June 11th, 3 days ago, 1,994,000 cases in the US, 113,000 deaths, 7,274,000 confirmed deaths worldwide, and 413,000 confirmed deaths. But it isn't just pandemics that we've faced uncertainty. It was the Great Depression too. My parents were in their teens during the Great Depression. No money for anything. They had to do whatever they could. Their future was very bleak. They had no money to go to school. They had no money to spend on things. My dad told me a story of getting a hole in the sole of a shoe and fixing it with a piece of cardboard. Today, we wouldn't even think about doing that. World War II followed that. Many horrible stories, death and dying and cruelty and uncertainty and hopelessness. Of all the battles, I think the invasion of Normandy is perhaps the scariest. A friend of mine, Chet Ravenscraft, was on the beach that day. He's a kind and gentle man, a people person. He became right-of-way agent for Boulder County after that when I worked there, but he could never bring himself to tell me and talk about D-Day. There was another man, another people person, in a landing craft, firing at German gun positions. He knew he could die. There wasn't time to be scared, he said. He said to himself he was only 19. He was too young to die. That's how you had to think, he said. His name was Yogi Berra. These men knew hard times. Like the Jews coming out of exile, they had never experienced anything like it. They had to make it up as they went. There's a common thread in these events. Our very lives are in jeopardy. The world as we knew it is upside down. Progress in our lives has been disrupted. We feel a terrible loss. We face a great unknown. How will we get back to normal? There is something in us that says the way things were is better than what will come. But are we sure of that? Comcast, the internet company, has an ad on television. Their tagline is, "Don't bounce back, bounce forward." A very good point. In the 1920s, there was a small company in Minnesota named Burma Vita that dealt in the Eastern herbal remedies from Burma. Their business was marginal and near failure. They tried bouncing back by working with a druggist, but it didn't work. The druggist suggested that they would make a product that well people could use. So they bounced forward, as suggested by Comcast, by developing the first successful brushless shaving cream and named it Burma Shave. This was the beginning of an American icon like Route 66. Alan Odell was selling Burma Shave produced by his father. He came up with an idea. He posted a series of rural road signs, usually 4 or 5, set about 100 feet apart. They were welcome eye-openers for weary drivers. The first signs arose on rural roads in Minnesota, and those didn't even rhyme. Sales picked up. They began advertising with more signs in more states, with clever jingles, and their business began to grow. As more signs were added, the verses got better. They were clean and wholesome, and most of all, they were clever and funny, in a time when funny was at a premium. During the Depression, their business grew quadrupling during that depression. One of the good ones, I'll just read a sign. Within this veil of toil and sin, your head grows bald, but not your chin. Use Burma Shave. That was one of their, we'll have more to share later. What was their secret? They look forward to a new future. Today, some call it the new normal. A new beginning is perhaps a more apt term. Alan Odell showed us the new beginning does not have to carry with it the assumption that it will not be as good as the past. The Methodist Church is struggling with this now, as are many other institutions. Yogi Berra made a relevant observation. The saying about turning a negative into a positive. Well, I think it's true. I always look at the brighter side. One time I was driving my family to a new town and said to them, I am lost, but at least we're making good time. So how can we turn our negative into a positive? How can we bounce forward like Comcast suggests and Burma Shave did? How can we turn a negative into a positive like Yogi? We can follow the examples of the Jews in Babylon, of the disciples in the locked door house, of Alan Odell with Burma Shave, of Chet Ravenscraft and Yogi Berra, who were on the beach in Normandy. They made it through hard times, not only survived, but thrived. They did it by looking forward to a future that was to be very different from their past. It was a new beginning. Sounds kind of hard, but here's Yogi's last bit of advice for the day. You don't have to swing hard to hit a home run. If you got the timing, it'll go. Amen.